Sounds like stretches you there to 39. It seems like I'm almost getting to 40 days, and I can't believe that I have done it. So this is a great achievement to me. Yeah, sometimes I find quite some difficulties to continue, but I'm happy that I continued, and now I'm going to start the first hour. So thank you.
So x does come first. All the numbers between 3 and 5 inclusive. That's what that says. It's kind of a big deal. I've just talked a whole bunch about the and about some set notation. How people understood what we talked about so far. Let's apply this to some inequalities. Firstly, a little review. Do you remember how to solve inequalities? And the answer is, we probably haven't seen inequalities in a while. Let's see if we know how to solve these things. X plus 3 is less than 8. X plus 3 is less than 8. If you want to solve inequalities, guess what? You can solve them almost exactly the same way as you solve equations. Provided you just kind of pretend, don't change the problem, but just kind of pretend that the inequality is an equal sign and do exactly the same stuff. You're going to solve it the same way you did equations. There's only one little hitch in the giddy up here. That's a little term right there, isn't it? There's only one little hitch, is that if you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to do something special with that. Okay? That's right. So everything else works just fine. So can I subtract 3 like I would normally do in an equation? Absolutely. Do I have to put the sign around? No. Don't do that. That's fine. The only time you would do that is if you multiply or divide by a negative. So we're going to subtract 3 like we would normally do with an equation. Don't change anything about this. Just write x less than 5, and you've got it down. Now, of course, this doesn't have an and associated with it yet. It just says x is less than 5. If you're asked to graph x is less than 5 like this, well, here's 5. Are these numbers the ones to the left of 5 or to the right of 5? Which one? Yeah, you know what? This is kind of nice. If you have an inequality and your x is coming first, this kind of points the way you want to graph. Notice how that arrow is kind of pointing to the left side. Do you see that? It's kind of pointing this way. It's like, oh, there's an arrow that way. Do you see that? It's arrow pointing that way. If your x, please just listen to what I'm saying now though. If your x comes first, now to put this thing around 5 to the x, is it pointing the right way? No. It's pointing the incorrect way. Your x doesn't come first. But if you manipulate it, like I manipulated, let's see. If I were to manipulate this one backwards, it would point the correct way. Your x must come first for you to graph this correctly. So if your x does come first, kind of points to what you're talking about. X less than 5, x to the left of 5. That's what this says. And you know what? We can still put this in interval notation. But the problem is, this interval started at 3, didn't it? Started at 3 and went to 5. Where's this interval start? Oh, so there's not actually a number, right? I mean, if you think about the numbers less than 5, can you ever find the end of that? There's negative 10. Is that the end? Negative 11 is smaller. Is the negative 11 the end? Negative 12 is smaller. Do you want to do that forever? Well, it's going to go on forever, right? No matter what number you give me, I can say, oh, there's one number smaller than that. Forever and ever and ever. So this thing starts at negative infinity. And it goes up to, where's it stop? That's where it stops. Why do I use parentheses? Very good. I want to make 2 points here. Firstly, he's correct. I'm going to use parentheses over here because do you notice there's no equal sign? If there's no equal sign, I cannot use a bracket because I'm not actually including the 5. What this says is you can go all the way up to 4.9999999 forever, but you can't ever go up to 5. I don't know if you understand that. Okay. Now, I have to use parentheses no matter what on the negative infinity. Why? Okay, very good. It's not equal to, that's maybe one reason, but even if I had it like this, just don't change your problem. Even if I had it like that, yes, this would be a bracket. This would still be a parentheses. Well, yeah, there's no actually end. Do you know how much negative infinity is? Me neither. So if you don't know it, can you ever get there? That's why you have parentheses over any infinity. You understand that one? Let's try one more together. I'll give you a couple to do on your own. We're also going to solve this one. Negative 2x minus 1 is less than 3. Let's do this. You tell me how to solve it. Oh, come on. We just shutting this off, and these are like basic equations, right? Treat this like a basic equation. How do you solve it? Add 1. So negative 2x. Do I change that sign around for inequality? I haven't done anything to that yet that requires that. Negative 2x is less than 4. Am I done?
No.
What's the last step I need to do?
Divide by negative 2.
Okay, divide by what?
Negative 2.
Wait, positive 2 or?
Negative.
Negative 2? Wait a minute. If I divide by negative 2, if you do that, which is what you're supposed to do here, right? The negative 2's are gone. You're going to get x. You're going to get negative 2. There's a problem. If you divide by a negative, if you change the sign there, what this is also doing is flipping around the inequality. So whereas we had our less than, if you divide by a negative, you must flip that inequality around. Gotta be that way. Make a little note here. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip your inequality. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip that inequality around. For example, this would go to this. That's what we mean by flip it around. You change your inequality. Hey, by the way, did you graph this? Yeah, what number are we going to put on our number line? Yeah, that's pretty obvious. That's the only number that we have up there. Are we going to be graphing the numbers to the left or to the right? I've kind of given this away a little bit because I didn't leave any space over here. But if you look at an inequality, this says arrows going to the right. It's talking about the numbers are bigger than negative 2. Where the numbers fall that are bigger than a certain number? That's to the right of it. So we're going to graph this way. We're talking about all these numbers. If we do the interval notation, which you're also going to have to do for this, come on the right side of the room, where's my interval going to start if I'm going this way? Where's it start? Does it start at negative infinity? Okay. So on my left-hand side of the room, where's it? Good. Am I going to use a bracket or parentheses on -2? Good. Negative bracket or parentheses on infinity. And we actually always use that for infinity. Richard, I feel okay with this so far. Try a couple on your own. I want you to get all the way down to doing. That's good practice for you. We're going to be doing a lot of that in this class. So start on that one. I'll give you another one to do in just a second. Hey, by the way, when's your next test? Do you know? It's not this coming Monday, is it?
No.
You sure? Let's say today. I still have 2 weeks. Look at you. That make y'all nervous? Okay, so solve these down. Don't change the inequality unless you divide by a negative or multiply by a negative, and then absolutely you do. Write this as interval notation at the very end, maybe graph it so you can see a picture of that, and that's what we're looking for. So in our first example up here, everybody, what's the first thing we're going to do on this problem, please? Good, so we're going to do that. That wasn't everybody, but whatever. And we get less than 4. Did you make that far? Next step is, of course, we have to solve for x. We treat this kind of like an equation. The only difference is if we divide by a negative, we flip it around. That's it. So we divide by 2 on both sides. We get x, we get 2, and we have to flip that thing around, right? Why not? Okay, so it's not just dividing, right? It's dividing by a certain type of number, a negative. So we leave this thing alone because we did not divide by a negative. If you want to graph this, it's already in the correct order. The x is on the correct side for you to graph this easily. X must be on the left-hand side. We put our 2 down. This is going to the left because it says less than or left than, going this way. If we did interval notation, this one starts at negative infinity. It ends at 2. We're going to use parentheses. That's as far as we can go in that problem. Did you get that far?
Yeah.
Good. Next one, of course, we do something very similar. We add 1 to it. Negative 3x less than or equal to 3. We're going to divide by negative 3. And we get x on the left-hand side. We get negative 1 on the right-hand side. However, you divide it by negative. And whenever you divide by negative, what that's doing is reversing your inequality. You're changing the negative from one side to the other. That has to move things around. So we're saying that positives are becoming negatives, negatives are becoming positives. What that does is flip our inequality around. So instead of having less than or equal to, I must have greater than or equal to. How many people made it that far? Good. So basic equation, however, if you're divided by a negative, we're flipping our inequality. Are you with me on this? Now we can go ahead and graph the same way. We have negative 1. Our arrow, since our x on the left-hand side is pointing to the right, we're talking about numbers that are bigger than a certain number. Bigger than means to the right. So we're going this way. We'll do our interval notation. We have negative 1 to infinity. Brackets or parentheses here.
Both.
Why both? Why both? Where does the bracket go? Am I going to put a bracket here?
No.
You don't know what infinity is. So if you don't know what infinity is, you can't put a bracket around it. You put a parentheses right there.
So infinity to the right.
What did I say? The infinity or the parentheses first? The parentheses always goes around an infinity, or infinity always requires a parentheses.
Oh.
Yeah. Either way you want to think about that. Brackets are for our integers when they include an equal sign on that. Cool. I feel right with this so far. Good deal. Good deal. I had something else on my mind, but I lost it. Probably wasn't that important, right? Just a key test question or something, you know. Whatever. I'm sure we'll come back to it. Let's see how now we can go ahead and combine this with our and portion of this section. So let's suppose, instead of just giving one inequality at a time, you're now given two. You're giving one inequality and another one happening at the same time. Let's see if we can do this in combination. And you're going to see why I had you graph this stuff, because it's going to be pretty apparent. You know what? Maybe we can do it. Maybe we can do it with that one. Before we do this problem, let's go back and look at this problem real quick, okay? I want you to notice that we were able to do this one all right, true? We were able to do this one all right. Did you understand how to do these problems? Now let's say that I change this problem a little bit. I say instead of doing this, I make it and in the middle. So instead of having them individually, I say now you have this inequality and at the same time this inequality. Let's look to see how this changes our problem. We made it all the way down. What I'd like to do now is instead of drawing two different number lines, let's put these things on the same number line and see if they have any intersection. That's what we're looking for, right? And means intersection. Let's see. Let's put down the 2. Let's put down the -1. Why am I putting the -1 to the left of 2? Well, this is less than 2. So we have to know how a number line works, right? Number line works with numbers go in order. So -1 has to go to the left. Let's graph this again. Some guys in the middle here. From 2, which way do I graph? Right or left?
Left.
Yeah, that's what we had in our original problem that I just erased, right? So we go this way. From -1, am I going to go left or right?
Right.
Do you see any crossover? Let's just write out a crossover, and we can finish off our inequality. Where does our interval start? Where's our interval end? Oh, here's a tricky question. Am I going to use a bracket or parentheses for my -1?
Oh, you're right.
Look at your -1. Am I going to use a bracket or parentheses?
Right.
How about for the 2? Why? Oh, nobody can decide. Yeah. And you know what? I can show you this as well. We're going to be doing this in just a bit. If you look at this, if you rearrange these like I did in 3 and the 5, notice how this could be written as -1 is less than or equal to x. I'm switching both of those around. I also have x. X is less than 2, that's from over here. That's -1 less than or equal to X less than 2. That is this picture. Do you guys see it? Same thing. Same thing. So you could write that as well. Now let's go talk about this one. When you do with the AND equalizer, let's solve both of these things at the same time. If we divide by 4 on this case, we get X is greater than or equal to 0. I don't flip anything around. I did not divide by negative. On the next one, of course, we're going to subtract 4. I'm going kind of quickly here because we should know how to solve basic equations. We have 2x is, do I need to flip that sign around? I'm subtracting 4. I'm not dividing by negative. -2. So even though that changed to a negative, I didn't divide by a negative. And we'll divide by 2 x's. Do I need to change that sign around now? No, I'm dividing a negative by a number. It's still negative, but I'm not dividing by a negative. Let's try and graph these. I think it's out. You just cried. I'm negative. Did I miss it the first time? You didn't miss it. Really? Yeah. That's unlike me. I need to keep my readings. If we graph both these on the same number line, because it says and says you got to do it with the same number line, look for crossover. Where does this thing start? Okay, well, we have a -1, we've got a 0. They don't have to be in any sort of scale or anything. Let's graph the 0 first. Let's graph the 0 first. Can you look at the 0? Which way am I going to go? Up and right or up and left? Right, because it's X on the left-hand side, it's pointing to the right. That's that way. Okay. Let's go to the -1. X is greater than -1. I'm here. Am I going to go up and right or up and left? Up and right. Oh, that's weird. It's pointing to the right again. That's correct. We are going to go to the right. Are you okay with this? Raise your hand if you understand where this graph is coming from. Good. Now, let's look for any crossover, because and means crossover at the same time. Where is it meshing together? Like this case. Here we had no crossover, here we had no crossover, here was crossover. Do I have a crossover here? There's nothing over here. Do I have a crossover here? No, there's only one of them. Do I have a crossover here?
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, this whole thing from here all the way till time ends, you have some crossover. Let's see how to write this in interval notation. Can you tell me where the crossover, the and, actually starts? Does it start at -1 or does it start at 0?
0.
Okay. And where does it end? Actually, it doesn't end, but we put infinity to signify that. Parentheses always goes around your infinities no matter what. Now, am I going to use a bracket or parentheses around the 0?
Bracket.
For sure. That's how you write your interval notation. So yeah, it's a little strange, right? We didn't have this situation because we had two inequalities go the same way. We're just looking where they're both valid. So pretty much, this one's valid from -1, this one's only valid from 0, so our crossover can only start at 0. We're going to solve these very lightning quick. We'll solve them lightning quick, but I want to talk mostly about the graph. Of course, you're going to divide by 2. Nothing's going to change. You get x is less than or equal to 0. True? Leave your and. You subtract 2. You 3x is greater than 6. You divide by 3. You get x is greater than 2. Those should be no-brainers. We solve those like basic algebra, pre-algebra even. Look at that. Those inequalities. Of course, we'll put 0 on our number line and 2 on our number line, but I want you to notice what happens. Watch on the board here with me. First, are you okay solving those down? Okay. Watch on the board here. We're going to have x less than 0. That's less than, that's left than, that's to the left. So x is on the correct side. Let's graph this way. We go this way. Let's look at the 2. Does 2 go to the left or to the right? And means crossover. And means an intersection. And means where these two inequalities have the same numbers. Do we have a crossover, a connection, an intersection, or where these have the same numbers? They're not both here, they're not both here, they're not both here. This has no intersection whatsoever. So I've given you kind of three examples now. I've given you one where we have a definite crossover, where it stops. I've given you one where the crossover goes on forever. I've given you one that doesn't have a crossover at all. We put that. We don't say no solution, we say the empty set. We say there's no numbers that have both of these things in common. It's impossible to think of a number that fits both here and here. That's what we're saying in this case. You with me on that still? Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today, we're not going to get to our ors. We'll get to that on Wednesday. Last thing we're going to talk about is, you remember how you can put these things together? I put these ones together over here and say we can make that compound inequality as one statement. What's nice is that a lot of times the book will do that for you. And on my test, I'll probably do that for you. So, and inequalities can often be written as these compound statements, like this, which are actually even a little bit easier to work with. Kind of nice. It's kind of really nice. The only thing is, you don't just have two sides anymore like a regular equation. In fact, you have kind of three sides. What you do to the middle, you also have to do to both other sides. Does that make sense to you? Solve the equation the same way. So if I'm trying to get x in the middle here, I want to keep that in the middle. What do I need to get rid of? How do I get rid of that 1? So are you understanding that? So if I'm going to subtract the 1 here, it's not just I subtract it here, I also have to subtract it here. All three of those little segments, every section. Can you tell me what's on the left-hand side, please? Does this inequality change? No, because I'm subtracting, I'm not dividing by negative. What's in the middle? How much is in the middle? Negative x. We didn't get rid of that yet. Then I have 8 on the right-hand side. Are you okay with that so far? All I do is subtract 1. Now, is this what I'm looking for? Do I want negative x? How do I get rid of that negative? So if I divide by negative 1, I do it here, and here, and here. I do get negative 4. Or I do get x, and I do get negative 8. But since I divided by negative, can you tell me what's happening to these signs? So they're not going to be facing this way anymore, they'll be facing this way. You okay with that so far? Now there's one thing, this is written backwards. It's really weird. So instead of, we don't want negative 4 is greater than x is greater than negative 8, that's written the wrong way. We need this to be written in order of a number line. I want you to notice how right now, the bigger number is on the left-hand side. You see that? What we're going to do with this, if you ever get that, which often happens if you're divided by negative, you're going to take that inequality, and take it off the board, you're going to flip it around and put it back on the board. So you're taking it, flipping it around, and putting it back. So instead of negative 4 is greater than x is greater than negative 8, I'm going to make negative 8 is less than x is less than negative 4. Does it say the same thing? Then that's appropriate to write. We want it this way because check it out. If you were to draw your interval notation right now, you're just looking for the numbers between negative 8 and negative 4. Notice how these numbers fall right down on your number line. If you want to go directly to interval notation, this is even better. Check this out. This is very easy to see. Where's your interval start? Someone else, where's your interval end? Am I going to use brackets or parentheses? That's it. Remember, this does not stand for a point in this context. This is an interval. I'm going to show what we're talking about today. Good, good. If you make that far, that's really good. We're going to practice this a couple times tomorrow, then we'll get on into our OR inequalities. So, if you remember from last time, what we were talking about, what numbers fall right down on your number line. If you want to go directly to interval notation, this is even better. Check this out. This is very easy to see. Where's your interval start? Someone else, where's your interval end? Am I going to use brackets or parentheses? That's it. Remember, this does not stand for a point in this context. This is an interval. I'm going to show what we talked about today. Good, good. If you make that far, that's really good. We're going to practice this a couple times tomorrow, then we'll get on into our OR inequalities. So, if you remember from last time, what we were talking about was these compound inequalities, where we're matching two inequalities together with the words and or the word or. Now, if you looked at your homework, you probably weren't able to do about half of it because we haven't even talked about the word or yet. That's our goal for today. We've pretty much finished up the word and. I'll review a couple concepts right now with you. Then we'll go on to the word or and see how that differs from the word and. So when we talked about the word and from last time, what we said was that and means the elements that are common to two sets at the same time. So what's in one group and at the same time in another group. Do you remember that from last time? It was the intersection. And since we had the intersection, we used that upside down letter U. It looked like a letter N without the little tail. And I said we were in the intersection with the and. The N was the and. The N. You get me? So it means common to both. And we found out that if we have inequalities, we can look to see where those things overlap. We graphed a lot of inequalities on a number line where they crossed over, where they intersected. That was our and. That was the intersection, and we were able to use interval notation with either brackets or parentheses to cover that. How many people remember that from last time? Good deal. We also learned that oftentimes and inequalities and compound inequalities can be represented like that. And it actually makes it a little bit easier to solve for us because we only have to look at our middle section here and solve that for x. And if we can do that, as long as we do it to both sides, we'll have ourselves a compound inequality at the very end. Let's see if we can do this together. What would be the first step in solving this inequality, please? Great, because we're trying to get x by itself. The only thing is that if you subtract 5 from the middle, you also have to subtract it from these two sides. There's now like 3 sections to this. On the left-hand side, how much do we get? Oh, hey, does our inequality flip around? When does our inequality flip around? Good. So this is still less than. What's in the middle? Perfect. Less than or equal to how much? Notice that on this inequality also I have a less than and I have a less than or equal to. I have 2 different inequalities. Don't lose track of those. Make sure that you have those inequalities on your paper. Don't change one to the other accidentally. Okay, we're not quite done. What's the next thing we need to do? So we're divided by, oh yeah, -2. So of course we found out that -2 over -2, that's going to give you a +1. In the middle here we'll get the x like we suspected. On the right hand side we'll get -2. But then, and since we divided by a negative, those inequalities have to flip around. So whereas this was a less than, now it becomes greater than. This is less or equal to, greater than or equal to. So we flip those around every time we not just divide, but divide by a negative. That's the key point there. You guys with me still? Now, am I done with that problem like it is? There's one little issue with this, and the issue is, according to a number line, this is written backwards. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? the small numbers on the right-hand side, the big numbers on the left-hand side, that's not appropriate. So what we did, what I said last time, is we're going to take this off the page, or the whiteboard in this case, take this off the whiteboard, flip it around, and put it back. So we're just reversing everything. Everything's going to flip around. So what should I start with if I'm going to reverse everything? Okay, now here's the important thing. Tell me what symbol I need to put next. It's following this -2. We're flipping that part around too. Do you see that? So this is going over here. In the middle, we have our x. That's not going to change. Then we're going to have, remember, we're flipping this less than 1. We just read everything backwards. So it's like you're reading from the right to the left. -2 less than or equal to x less than 1. That's what we have here. So far, so good. Can you put this in interval notation? That's with the parentheses or with the brackets. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, since we wrote it this way, this is really nice for us. This pretty much is a picture of a number line. That's all it is. It just says where you start, it says where you end, and it says whether or not you can include these numbers at the end. So where does this interval start? Okay. Why a bracket? And we have going up to 1. That one's going to be a perfect. These say the same thing. Actually, all 3 of these say the same thing. These 2 are just written appropriately. Those 2 are the ones we want. This is the most concise way we can write that. This says you can go from 2 inclusive to 1 non-inclusive. And all of those points in there, -2, -1, 0, and up to 1, like 0.999, will work in this compound inequality. Do you guys feel good about the and inequalities here? We feel just fine. Ready to move on to OR. All right. Now let's see how OR differs. Oh yeah, there's one more. I do want to show you this one. Just to make sure you can do this. Like that one. Can we do it if there's a fraction in the middle? Let's do this real quick. What's our first step going to be on this problem, folks? Oh, before the 2. Now let's get rid of that 1. You could multiply by 2 everywhere as long as you included this one, this one, this one, and that one, all 4 spots. You could do that. I'm going to choose to subtract 1 in this case and get -4 less than or equal to x over 2 less than 4. That way I only have to multiply 3 things by the 2. That's the only reason in this case. I just wanted you to notice that x over 2 is solvable. You don't have to stop here. We have x divided by 2. The way we get rid of division, we simply multiply by the number that is our denominator. If we do that in all 3 spots, that's here, here, and here. I'm going to put parentheses around there to signify that's a negative number. What are we going to get in the middle? Well, those 2 simplify to 1, and we get an x. Do we have to change any of these signs?
No.
That's an 8. That's a -8. Hey, do I need to flip this thing around in the paper like we did before? This is already in the correct order. This is great. -8 to 8, that looks like a number line already. We'll simply write this in integral notation. We go from -8 to 8. This is why this compound inequality form is very nice. It really just gives it straight to you if you write those numbers out. That's great. Parentheses, bracket again, and we're done. Okay, now we can look how OR differs from our AND. So now we're talking about the word OR. English, when you say the word or, typically we mean either or, right? We say, I would like apple pie or cherry pie. Do you get both apple pie and cherry pie? Typically not in English, but here's how it works in math. Yeah, of course, I get apple and cherry, duh. Well, in math, here's how it works. It says you can have either you can have apple pie or cherry pie. What that means is you get apple pie, or you get cherry pie, or you get both apple pie and cherry pie. So or in mathematics means you get one or the other, or you get both of them. Does that make sense? So pretty much it says if you get any portion of it, that satisfies the or. So for us, or means, first it means the union of two sets. The and was intersection. The or means a union. So a union says take all of it. That counts as or. You with me on this? And was just this portion, this little bit that counted that was in both our sets. Or is the union. It takes everything. So or is the union of two sets. And what we were just talking about is or is the elements that is common to both sets, or in either one. Or you can say this differently, the elements that are in one set, or the other set, or even in both sets. Intersection had that and, that Union has, what do you think? You probably saw that in homework. I started your homework. You're like, well, what's that mean? What's that U mean? That U, it's not really a U because it doesn't have a tail, but it stands for union. That symbol says union. It says the or. That's the or for us. And it represents the elements that are in either one set or the other, or in both sets. Let's look at a Venn diagram and see how this is a little bit different than our and. Let's say that's set A, that's set B. Can you identify the and, the intersection of these sets? Yeah, that's the intersection right there. Here's what or says. Or says it could be here, or it could be here, or it could even be in both. But no matter where it is, it counts for the or. Does that make sense to you? That's the union. It takes everything in. So our or is all of that. All of that and the middle part. Or is everything in either set. Listen, does it have to be in both sets to count for or? No, it just has to be in at least one of them. Does it already include the intersection? Look at that. It includes the intersection right there. It's there. So the or says it's here, or it could be both. Everything that happens, we're counting that as our or. Let's go ahead and do a couple examples. So this would be the whole thing is a union. So a couple examples to illustrate this real quick. one set, one you can provide? I want to find the union with this other set. Three, five, six. Let's go ahead and find the union here. Hey, firstly, could you tell me what the intersection is for this set? Good, that's what's common to both of them. We covered that last time. The union is not necessarily what's common to both, just what happens. So let's see what numbers happen. Does 0 happen? Is 0 going to be in the union? 0 is not actually common to both of them, so, or either one of them. That's what we're looking for. What's common to either one or both. So what's the first number in our union going to be? Yeah, 1 occurs here. Does it occur here? No, but it doesn't matter. As long as it occurs once, at least once. That's what we're talking about for a union. So union says, yeah, 1's there. What else is there? 2's there. Somebody else, what else is there? Yeah, even though 3 is shared, that still is okay for a union. All right, so as long as it's in one, at least one of them. So 3, good. What else is there, folks? Yeah, 6 is there also because 6, while it's not in this one, it's over here. It occurred at least once. Is there any other numbers that we have missed? That's it then. Notice how we just list out the numbers one time, even though it occurred twice here, 3 and 3, 4, 4, 5, and 5. We're just listing out once. Okay, we don't have to double count that. We always got it. You guys have a good idea about the OR? Let's do one more example, then we'll move on. Show you how this applies to inequalities. Really don't have an eraser today? This was so good, we never have to erase it. That's what that meant. I hope this isn't like a blow your nose towel. Okay, let's say A is the set X, such that X is an odd integer, greater than 0, less than 20. That's it, make it less than 14. B is the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What I want you to do is find the union of A and B. So where is A and B? Have any elements at all? Did you find it? So we just have to think about what elements even occur in either A or B or both. So let's look at A first. We'll list out the A's and then we'll take the B's. What's the first number in set A? I think we've had this exact example before. Yeah, 1's up there. What are the other elements in A? 8s up there? What occurs in, oh, you know what? I forgot a word. There we go.
Changes my answer then.
Yeah, that changes everybody's answer. My bad. Otherwise, you're like, well, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. Let's go ahead and let's do an odd integer. My bad. An odd integer. What are the odd integers between 0 and 9, basically? Okay, so there's 5 of them. So automatically 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Those have to be in our set automatically because they're in A alone. Are you with me on this? Now we're going to count the ones in B that haven't already occurred, and that's how we're going to figure out what's in the union. So what ones are in B that aren't necessarily in set A? You tell me those.
2, 4.
So 2's got to be there, 4's got to be there, 6. How about 8? Is 8 going to be in our?
Yeah.
No. So just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 9. The blue numbers, those are from set A. The black numbers, those are from set B. We don't double count them. That's our union. How many people feel okay with that one? Good deal. Now let's look to see how this is applied to some inequalities. So first set, let's say x such that x is less than or equal to 1. Second set, we'll say x is greater than or equal to 3. I want you to think of these numbers again. Can you think of the numbers that are up here, x such that x is less than or equal to 1? Give me some numbers in this set. What's one number? -5 would work. What's another number? 0 would work. What else? Negative infinity, sure, it's not really a number itself, but -2 would happen. What about 1? Is 1 included in that?
Yeah.
Sure. How about 0.5? How about 2?
No.
How about 1.5?
No.
Okay, good. How about this one? Let's think of some numbers in x is greater than or equal to 3. What are those numbers? 3 works. What else? 4, 7, 5, anything bigger than that 3. So if I were to graph this, which I'm going to do after drawing this inequality, I'm going to be looking for x such that x is less than or equal to 1, or x is greater than or equal to 3. We're going to graph these at the same time, just like we did for our AND inequalities. It's very, very similar. So it's a number line. We have to put our numbers on there. They don't have to be to scale. They just have to be in order. So it has to go 1 and 3 because that's, of course, a number line. We noticed last time that if our x's come first, this kind of points in the direction that we want to graph. So from 1, are we going to go up and to the right or up and to the left? Which one? Yeah, left, because we have less than 1, numbers less than 1 are to the left of 1. So we're going this way. How about at 3? X is greater than or equal to 3. Can you tell me, folks, which numbers are greater than or equal to 3? The ones to the right or the ones to the left? So we're going to go up and to the right. Do you guys feel okay with that graph? Is there a crossover? All right. Here's one thing I'm going to ask you to do. I want to make sure you see this. If I asked you for this, let's say this was A and this is B. If I asked you for A and B, what's the intersection of A and B? Is there any intersection?
No.
If it asks you that, it looks like this. Well, you put that. There is no intersection. There's no crossover. You with me, folks? Now, if I'm going to ask you for this, A or B, or A union B, yeah, there is a union out of this. The union is anything that just takes place on your graph. So it's, you take every different interval and you just mash it together. That's what OR says. It says if it exists, then we're going to label it in interval notation. So let's look at this. How many intervals do we have up here? The only one that we don't have name the only interval that we don't have. What do you mean 2? Oh, well, what about like 1.001? Isn't that a number up there? And 2.73, that's a number up here. The only range of numbers that we don't have, we've got this one, right? That has to count in our union. This is here. We've got this one, that's got to count in your union. That's there. The only place that we don't have a line or a section is between the numbers 1 and 3. Are you with me here, folks? So how we represent a union, this type of graph, we'd say, let's just label out each interval that has happened. Let's look at our first interval. Where's this interval start? No, it started 1. We read from left to right. Left to right. Where's it start? Where's this interval end? You gotta be better at this. You gotta be with me on this stuff here, folks. Do you all see that the interval does start at negative infinity? Okay, good. Where does this interval end?
1.
Good. That's our first interval. First interval. Let's go ahead and use the appropriate symbols here. Do we need parentheses or brackets for this? Why a parenthesis? Good. They do always get them. And why a bracket, folks? Okay. You'll agree that this is this interval, yeah? You got that down. Do we have any more intervals? Yeah, for or we do. For the union, we just list out all the different intervals that we have. Because if numbers have existed in one interval, they have to be in the union. That's what we had over here. This wasn't common to both. This wasn't common to both. These happened to be. So we listed out everything that just happened. Notice how this is what we have. We just have circles. Look at 4 here. We just have circles that are not intersecting. These ones happen to be intersecting. If these were not intersecting, we would still have listed out every number. True? That's what we're doing here. So we have negative infinity to 1. The other interval is, where's the other interval? The other interval. See, I did live my dairy. The other. Did it? Starts at 3, sure. Where's it end? Parentheses, of course we have a bracket, and here's what you do between them. Can't forget this part. Since you're talking about the union, what you're saying is, I want this one, or this one, or both. That's what you're saying. You have to have that union that combines them. Would you raise your hand if you're okay with this so far? Good. Let's go ahead and apply this to some honest inequalities. Work them down, solve them like we did before, see what these graphs look like, be able to do interval notation, and if you can make it this far, you really do know what you're talking about. So let's. So let's try a couple examples here. First one, let's suppose I have 3x minus 2 greater than or equal to 10, or x minus 6 is less than or equal to negative 4. Now, let me tell you something. With and, we were able to put inequalities together. You remember that? The compound inequality where it was like something less than something less than something? You cannot do that with or. It doesn't work. Because what you get is a number less than x greater than something else. And it doesn't make sense mathematically to do that. So while we could combine the ands and make one large inequality out of it, can we do that with the ors? If it's ors, you just solve them individually. No problem. So like 2 problems to 1. You solve this one, you put it on a number line, you graph it like we just did, and you see where those intervals are. You ready to do that? Let's go ahead and solve these. Let's solve the easy one first. How do you solve that one? What would you do? Perfect. We can do that. So we have x, nothing changes, 2. On the other side, of course, we'll add 2. We'll get 3x greater than or equal to 12, We'll divide by 3. Does the inequality have to flip around in this case?
No.
Good. Can you graph that on the number line? Go, yes. Yeah. Wake up today, like, oh, I'm tired. I'm sleeping with my eyes open right now. I have no idea if I can do this. I'll watch your video later. No, can you do that? We just did it. Let's try it. It just has to be in order. So, am I going to do 4, 2? No. This is number line. We got to do 2, 4. Let's go over to the 4 first. Am I going to go up and to the right or up and to the left here, ladies and gentlemen? Good. You got to be sticking with me here. This is important because in the future I'm going to show you something that's kind of interesting here. You see that we are going to the right, yes? This number is bigger than 4. Go to 4. Go to the right. How about 2? Up and to the right or up and to the left? Perfect. It's pointing left. We're talking about less than 2. Looks like that. Typically, here's what happens. With and, typically, 90% of the time, with and, you get this. With and, you get this. Because you're talking about the crossover, right? Typically with and, you get the crossover. Usually. If it's like this, you have no, like, that, the and was 0, right? No intersection here. That you could have that situation, it doesn't happen very often. Typically and crosses over, and typically or doesn't. Typically it doesn't do that. It goes this way. So and usually like this, or usually like this. There's typically not a crossover. If there is a crossover with or, we're gonna look at that later. Name me my intervals here. Where's the first one start? 2. And we're going to use a parentheses for our infinity and a bracket for our 2 because we have that equals 2. We'll put a union in the middle saying there's another interval. We got a bracket for the 4. We've got a parentheses for the infinity, and that's our interval notation for or. By the way, with or, can you see that there will always be a solution? With and, there didn't have to be a solution. With or, there you always have an interval. If you have an interval, you've got at least some solution. Okay, one more together, then we'll do one on your own if you don't for a second here. Why don't you solve those by yourselves? I know you can solve them, so go ahead and do that. And then we'll graph them together. Or if you'd like to graph them, go ahead, but we'll talk about it in just a second together. So the solving of these things, that's really not supposed to be all that bad for us. We'll add 7 here. Obviously not adding 6 are. We'll get x is less than or equal to 6. We don't change any of those inequalities around because we are not dividing by a negative. You get that problem. How many people were able to solve it down to that far? Good, that's fantastic. Now we grab it. Of course, 4 has to go here, and 6 has to go here, because it's a number line. It's got to be in that order. But look what happens. If I go to my 6, this says x is less than 6. Less than means left than, to the left. So from our 6, we'll go up and to the left. From 4, we'll go up and, wait a minute, to the left and right? To the right. This is interesting for 4. This is one of those cases where you have the crossover. I told you that that may happen in like 10% of the cases. You could have that. So let's talk about the interval. We do have a crossover. We would even have an and here. This is one of those cases where the circles, they actually intersect. There is a part there. But for our or takes everything that happens up here. So tell me, where does the interval for 6 start? And it goes all the way to 6. But look at the other interval starts at 4 and it goes to positive infinity and they overlap. So all in all, where does this interval start? And where does this interval stop? With no pause, right? With no pause. Here we had a pause where it didn't work. This went negative infinity to 2. Pause. 4 to infinity. You with me on that? This one goes for union. Negative infinity. We have a crossover. I say double up here. And then positive infinity. There's no break in this interval. There's no break. Even it crosses over. This is like a double count. So this whole interval for union, for the union of this, the or, notice we're talking about or. For or means the whole thing. Negative infinity all the way to positive infinity. You see the difference between this problem and this problem. Do you see how if I had asked you for the and, if I had asked you for the and, I would be going from 4 to 6. Okay, that's the difference between and or. And means where's it crossover, or means just list me everything that happens, basically. That's what it means. Why don't you try one of these on your own for me, okay? Let's do 8x plus 5 is less than or equal to 8. So the solving is really not the hard part here. In fact, in the rest of this chapter, honestly, the solving is not hard. There's not a whole lot of distribution, compiling terms, or negatives, or anything like that. It's really just understanding how to graph that and what or means. How to graph that, what and means. That's really it. How to put in interval notation, that's another thing. By the way, is it okay to get fractions? Yeah. Sure. Well, x is greater than 3, we can get that one. This one will subtract 5. We get less than or equal to 3 if we divide by 8. We get less than 3/8. Did you make it that far? You just got to put these on a number line appropriately, in the correct order. See, it really doesn't matter if that's 3/8. It's just going to be a dash on a number line, right? It doesn't matter if it's subtraction or not. You just have to know which one's bigger and which one's smaller. So, of course, a whole number is going to be larger than 3/8. So it's going to go 3/8 to 3. But I need to know that if that was a fraction, you'd have to put those in the correct order, because sometimes you'll get 2 fractions. Just be prepared to make sure you know how to put these in appropriate order on a number line. So 3/8 goes here. 3 goes here. Let's go to 3/8 first. Everybody, are we going to go up and to the left or up and to the right for 3/8? Good. It says less than left. How about 3? Up and to the left or up and to the right? Right, for sure, because it says greater than. It's pointing that way. We have the typical version of an OR here. This is the one that we usually see for OR. It looks like that one. If it ever does cross over for OR, you're going to do negative infinity to infinity, because that says everything's included there. You with me? But here we have the pause. We're just going to do first interval, union, second interval. So negative infinity to 3/8. Then we'll have 3 to infinity. Those are our 2 intervals. We've been practicing that a lot. The U's got to go in the middle. I know parentheses go for our infinities. What symbols are going to go here for the 3/8? What do we have? So bracket there and bracket here. Okay, parentheses. Because we had a not equals. Didn't have it. Raise your hand if you made it that far. Feel okay with that? Good for you. That's fantastic. Do you feel okay about these and OR statements? Awesome. Awesome. Right now, we're going to talk about one that we're going to take a break actually from inequality. So we're going to come back to it in section 9.3.
For Graham, the week was just the beginning. Now,
In section 9.2, we talked for a while about absolute value. Do you remember absolute value? Like, absolutely. Get it, Mr. Leonard? I'm so funny. I go, yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, we're going to talk about absolute value for a little bit, because we're going to combine, here's where this chapter's going. We did inequalities, we're doing absolute value. Next, we're going to combine absolute value with inequalities, and look what that does. It's going to be kind of interesting. Absolute value equations. Can you tell me, what does absolute value calculate, or what's it determine? Say that louder.
The distance from 0.
That's exactly right. Did you guys hear back there? Good. So if absolute value calculates the distance from 0, how much is the absolute value of 9? What that's saying is that 9 is just 9 units away from 0. It's basically how much would you have to count to get there. What's the absolute value of negative 12? Good. It's basically like I'm standing in the middle of this room with a tape measure and saying this. I'll go this way. About how far am I from that wall? It looks like about 10 feet. So if I took my tape measure out, it's going to give me 10 feet, right? But if I turn around and measure to this wall, that's about 12 feet. Is it going to give me negative 12 feet that way? Tape measure is still going to give me 12 feet, right? Even though it's a completely different direction, distance doesn't matter. It's just saying you're a certain distance away from something. That's what absolute value does. It says absolute value of 9 is 9 because positive 9 is 9 units away. Absolute value of negative 12 is 12 because negative 12 is 12 steps away from 0. You with me? Even though that was a negative, we're talking about the distance from 0. So basically, if you want to think about it this way, absolute value takes a positive number and keeps it positive, takes a negative number and makes it positive. What about this one? 8 or negative 8, what do you think? Why doesn't that change to positive 8? I don't get it. All right, so it's only, that negative is only applied to the absolute value that's inside of that. So this is basically saying, what's the absolute value of 8? And then take the opposite, or take the negative of that. So this happens to be negative 8 for sure. So the difference between here and here, if the negative is outside of the absolute value, it doesn't really get applied to that. Now, this is all fine and good. This is stuff you've had before. This is all the way back in like pre-algebra days. What we haven't really talked a whole lot about is what happens if you have an equation. So for instance, what if the absolute value of x equaled a number? Could you tell me how much x is? 5. Yeah, 5 would work, right? Because if I took the absolute value of 5, that would give me 5, wouldn't it? 5. Well, wait a second. So a couple other people said a couple other things. What'd you say? Well, wait a second, why negative 5? Oh, so if I plug in positive 5, the absolute value of 5 is 5, true? Negative 5, what's the absolute value of negative 5? Hey, it works. So with absolute value, we get how many solutions do you think? Because here's what it does. Absolute value doesn't care whether something's positive or negative. It's going to make it positive no matter what. So if I'm looking for 5, I could substitute in here both 5 and negative 5, and they would both work in this equation. True? Well, that's kind of interesting. That really doesn't happen that much. How about this one? Absolute value of y equals 12. Does that still have two solutions? What are they? Good, all right. Because if I plug both of those things in there, they are both going to give me positive 12. How about this one? How many solutions does that one have? 1. Yeah, there's no negative 0, right? So this is the only time where you actually get just one solution. So if it's equal to 0, then yeah, y, that's the only thing that's going to work. Negative 0 doesn't really make sense to write. Absolute value of x equals negative 3. What are you going to get out of that one?
You can't do it.
Well, why can't you do
You
it?
can't get a negative number out of the absolute value.
So if I plug in anything, if I plug in 3, but plug in 3, what's the absolute value of 3? Okay, if I plug in negative 3, what's the absolute value of negative 3? Can I get negative 3 from the absolute value?
Only the negatives outside that.
Okay, so this, that would be possible, wouldn't it? The negative, sure, because I can plug in 3 or negative 3 and both change it to negative. But if I do that with no negative sign, is that possible? That would be a problem. So if you have just an absolute value and it equals a negative, you know that's no solution. No solution there. Do you feel okay with this absolute value stuff so far? Raise your hand if you do. Feel all right with it. Good. Let's see how to make a little bit more complicated equations. Because right now, it's pretty basic stuff. We're going to go ahead and move on into what happens when you have like true equations in there, true expressions. And we'll stop here at the end of this example. Let's write that down. So the absolute value of 4x plus 2 equals 6. Now we already learned from over here that probably this thing has two solutions to it. With it? Probably two solutions. But how in the world do we figure them out? Well, here's the deal. If we look back over here, we knew the absolute value equals 5. Here's what we said. If the inside of this equals 5 itself, absolute value is not going to change that. You with me? However, if the inside of this, notice how I'm saying the inside of this rather than just x. If the inside of this equals the negative, negative of this number, it wouldn't matter because the absolute value will make it positive, therefore it would equal that number. Are you looking at it? I'll say it one more time so you really get it. If the inside equals this number, you're good. Absolute value wouldn't change it. If the inside of this equals the negative of this number, you're also good, because this would change that negative into the positive. You with me? So let's take that and run with it over here. If the inside of this equals 6, you know this is going to be a true statement. You with me? Because absolute value of 6 is going to be 6. However, if the inside of this equals negative 6, is it still going to give you a true statement?
Yep.
What's the absolute value of negative 6? So let's ask you one more time. If this equals 6, you know you're going to be okay, because the absolute value of 6 is 6. If this equals negative 6, what's the absolute value of negative 6? You're still going to be okay. Here's what this says to you. You will get 2 solutions. You're going to get, in fact, 2 equations. You can't just solve this thing directly. If I see on your test you go, oh, I'm going to subtract 2 and divide by 4, I know you really don't understand what absolute value means. What absolute value means is that I can take the inside of this and set it equal to that number. Because if I know that if this part equals 6, the inside of it equals 6, then the absolute value of 6 is 6. However, I also know that if the inside of my absolute value equals negative 6, here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying. What's the absolute value of negative 6? What's the absolute value of 6? If I set this equal to negative 6 and this equal to 6, my inside, it doesn't really matter because absolute value is going to make both positive 6. Not sure if you're with me on this one. Let's solve this and see that that's actually true. 2 equals 4. We'll divide by 4. I'm going quickly through the solving of this because, well, the equations, that's the basic part. Really remembering it is the 2 equations here. That's what's important. Subtract 2, we're going to get 4 out of 8. We'll divide by 4. X is negative 2. Let's just go ahead and check this to make sure, okay? Are you with me? Watch. Let's plug in 1. Everybody, what's 4 times 1? Plus 2. What's the absolute value of 6? So is that a solution? Let's try negative 2. What's 4 times negative 2? Plus 2. Negative 6. What's the absolute value of negative 6? That's what we said this. If the inside equals negative 6, the absolute value will make it positive no matter what. So we get 2 solutions out of that. All right, the steps on the board next time, we'll start with one of these and we'll move on. So if you remember from yesterday, what we're dealing with are these absolute value equations. And we said this about absolute value. Whatever's on the inside, absolute value will make it positive. So if it is positive, it remains positive. If it's negative, it will become positive. So according to our equations, it meant this. It said if the inside of this equation is equal to the number itself, the absolute value is not going to change it. It's going to remain that same exact positive number. That would be great. That right there yields the first equation for us. It says if this inside part equals this number, if the inside part equals this number, that's going to give us one solution because if this equals positive 6, absolute value will keep positive 6, positive 6. That will be a solution. However, what we also know about absolute value is that it will make any negative number positive. So the other option we have here is if this inside part happens to be negative 6, that absolute value will take that negative 6, it will make it positive 6, and that will be another solution to this problem. That's what we learned yesterday, and we felt okay with that last time. Good, so that gives us our two equations. We set one of them equal to the number itself. We set one of them equal to the negative of that number. Because if the inside part is equal to negative 6, the absolute value of negative 6 gives us 6. The absolute value of 6 gives us 6. That's two solutions for us. So I want you to write down this note. This is what we didn't do last time. We're going to make two equations every time we see absolute value in this class. Make two equations. The first one equal to the number. So one of them equal to the number. In this case, that's our 6. And one of them equal to the negative of that number, because absolute value will take the negative, force it to become positive, and therefore change that into another solution. So one equal to the number itself, one equal to the negative of that number. Listen, in this section, it's not actually the solving that's hard. I mean, honestly, that's like pre-algebra stuff. That's very, very easy. That one's very, very easy. The solving's not hard. It's remembering that, oh, with absolute value equations, I've got to make this equal to 2. I have to have two equations on this, one equal to the number and one equal to the negative. The solving's easy. I mean, everybody can do that. That's why you're here. But if you forget to make the two equations, are you going to get this right? You're going to get it maybe half right. I mean, if you just solve this directly, you're going to get this one probably, because that's exactly the same thing with the absolute values, but you're going to completely miss the idea of absolute value, which is you also have to have this. You also have to know that the absolute value takes a negative and makes it positive. Therefore, that's giving us another option for a solution. Are you with me on that? So you have to know that we're going to get those two equations out of this. Let's solve them again. I mean, I think we did this last time, but it's not hard. I mean, the solving's the pretty nice part about this. We just go down and do what we normally do with our equations. We get our two solutions. We checked that last time to make sure they both worked. And if you want to do it again, we can do it again. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 2, that gives us 6. Absolute value of 6 is, that's where you come in, is 6. Good, yeah. So that works. If we do negative 2, 4 times negative 2, that's negative 8, plus 2 is negative 6, so it's absolute value of negative 6. So they both are solutions for us. But we have to show that with our two equations. Why don't you try one of these on your own to make sure that you can handle it, then we'll continue. There you go. Go ahead and solve that one. If you get done with this one really quickly, why don't you try another one for me? We're going to work on this one together in a second. Now, I'll be walking around. If you need a hand on this, let me know. is absolute value. How many equations do you get with this absolute value problem? How many equations are you always going to get with an absolute value problem? Okay, we're going to get started on the first one here. So the first one, the way we look at this, we say, okay, absolute value equals a whole that number over here. We know that if the inside of our absolute value, 2x minus 3 equals positive 5, the absolute value of positive 5 is going to give us positive 5. That's great. This is one solution, or one equation that's going to give us one solution. The other portion of this is we also know that if the 2x minus 3 equals negative 5, the absolute value of negative 5 is going to give us positive 5. That's where we're getting these two. If we solve each of these, it's going to give us our two unique solutions. We'll plug that in to double check that it does work. This should work for us. Notice how the steps are the same. You're just adding or subtracting or dividing with a different number on the side. So we'll have 2x equals 8 divided by 2. Hopefully you got 4 as one of your solutions. Did you get 4? Okay. The other one will add 3 just like we did before. That's negative 2. We'll divide by 2 and get negative 1. Check both of them. Make sure you have this right. I mean, these are pretty easy to check, right? You may as well go through and do that. If we check 4, we have 2 times 4 is 8. Minus 3, that's positive 5. That's the value of positive 5 is 5. That works. Negative 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Minus 3 is negative 5. That's the value of negative 5 is 5. They both work out for you. We've got both of those. Good deal. Good deal. Now the next one, again, I just want you to get familiar with those fractions again. Make sure that when we see those, we don't just get stuck on them. The same process is going to work for us. We know that if the inside is equal to 1, that's the value of 1 is going to give us 1. That's great. The other equation, we're just going to make it equal to the negative of that number because we know that the absolute value of negative 1 is still going to give us positive 1. Well, you start to see why we have these two equations for absolute value every single time. Because we know that no matter what, I mean, whether you have a positive or a negative, no matter what, the absolute value is going to give us the positive version of that number. That's where this one's coming from, is from that thought. How do we solve these? You could. There's actually two options here. You can use what we learned in chapter 7, multiply every single term by 3, and that would work. Or you could subtract 4 first and then multiply 3. Either way that you want to do that. This one's kind of nice because you have a couple options here. How many people multiply by 3 first? How many people subtracted 3 first? I'm sorry, subtracted 4 first. Did you subtract 3? I hope nobody subtracted 3. Okay, good. Maybe I'll do one way and one the other way so you see the difference up here, okay? So first way, if you subtracted 4 first, you get x over 3 equals a negative 5. And then you could multiply both sides by 3 because we have x divided by 3. The way you do that is multiply. We got it, one solution. The other one, if you want to multiply by 3 first, this is the idea of using the LCD to get rid of denominators like we did from like chapter 7 stuff. You want to do that, that's fine. You just have to make sure that you're not just doing this. That's going to give you the wrong answer. If you are going to multiply by 3, you got to do it appropriately. That means this term, but also this one right here. You cannot forget about that one. So if you want to multiply everything by 3, that still will simplify to 1. You get x plus 12 in this case equals 3. There. Okay. And then if we subtract 12, you get negative 9.
Yes.
So either way you do those, we should get the same answers. And you should check it. If we plug in negative 15 divided by 3, how much is negative 15? How much? Negative 5 plus 4, that gives us negative 1. Absolute value of negative 1 is 1. That works. If we do negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3 plus 4 is 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1. That also works. How many will feel pretty good about these basic absolute value equations? Good. All right. That's fantastic. Let's start looking at a couple different scenarios And then we'll look at the end of our section here, what happens if we have an absolute value equal to an absolute value? How can we do that sort of thing? That'll be the last thing we look at. So moving on. You know, before when we did this, we looked at this and said, oh, I know that if the absolute value equals a number, then the inside of that could equal either the number or the negative of that number, and we're still going to be okay because the absolute value makes it positive no matter what. Does this one look at this one or this one? What's different about that one that you didn't necessarily have in these two? Do you see it?
The 9 on the side of the absolute.
Yeah, that's actually going to make a big difference for you. Right? Here's what this says. When we had absolute value equal to a number, this was just the absolute value itself would make this number positive no matter what, right? It's going to equal that thing over there, whatever that number is. In this case, it says, yeah, this absolute value, that's going to make whatever's in there positive, but then I'm adding 9 to it before I have that equal to 4 yet. What this didn't do, what this didn't explain was that if you have another number over here, we can't just change this to plus and minus. We can't just make this side equal to the positive 19 and this side equal to the negative 19, because that is going to change when I subtract 9 from both those numbers. That's going to be a big issue for us. This doesn't make this whole side positive 19 or negative 19. It just makes this little part positive, no matter what we put in there. Does that make sense to you? So the key here is, if we're going to solve these absolute value equations, you have to have absolute value equals a number. That's what you have to have. It has to look like this, or it has to look like this. Once we have this number at the back end of that, that's something we have to deal with first before we set up our two equations. Are you with me, folks? So I'll make a little note up here. You need to isolate or get the absolute value by itself before you make two equations. You know, before when we did this, we looked at this and said, oh, I know that if the absolute value equals a number, then the inside of that could equal either the number or the negative of that number, and we're still going to be okay because the absolute value makes it positive no matter what. Does this one look exactly like this one or this one? What's different about that one that you didn't necessarily have in these two? Do you see it?
The 9 on the side of the absolute.
Yeah, that's actually going to make a big difference for you. Right? Here's what this says. When we had absolute value equal to a number, this was just the absolute value itself would make this number positive no matter what, right? It's going to equal that thing with that, whatever that number is. In this case, it says, yeah, this absolute value, that's going to make whatever is in there positive, but then I'm adding 9 to it before I have that equal to 19. This right here can be an issue for you. What this didn't do, what this didn't explain was that if you have another number over here, we can't just change this to plus and minus. We can't just make this side equal to the positive 19 and this side equal to the negative 19 because that is going to change when I subtract 9 from both those numbers. That's going to be a big issue for us. This doesn't make this whole side positive 19 or negative 19. It just makes this little part positive no matter what we put in there. Does that make sense to you? So the key here is that if we're going to solve these absolute value equations, you have to have absolute value equals a number. That's what you have to have. It has to look like this, or it has to look like this. Once we have this number at the back end of that, that's something we have to deal with first before we set up our two equations. Are you with me, folks? So I'm going to make a little note up here. You need to isolate or get the absolute value by itself before you make two equations. Isolate the absolute value before you make the equation. Essentially, you got to get it to look like this. It has to be absolute value equals number. And I'll show you why on this problem if you want to see it. So if we're supposed to isolate this first, what do you think the first thing we're going to do is? Great, let's do that. Yeah, it's got to look like that. So if we subtract 9, then we're going to get the absolute value of 5x equals 10. That looks like what we've been doing the whole time. Do you guys see the difference between this one and this one? How this one looks the same as that, but this one does not. If we try to do the two equations from right here, here's what would happen. I'm going to put that back on the board in just a second. I just want you to see this. If I were to make up my two equations now, that'd be one of them. That'd be the other one, right? But that 9, since it's not associated with the absolute value at this point, subtracting 9 is going to really change this problem for us. Here we have the 10. This is going to work out either way. This one's going to be fine for us. But this one is the one that would really mess us up. If we subtract 9 here, we're going to get, what's that, negative 28? That's going to be different from what we're about to get. You see, the problem is, if I change this from 19 to a negative and then subtract 9, that's different than subtracting 9 and then changing it to a negative. We know this method, if I do 5x equals 10, we know, or absolute value 5x equals 10, we know this method works. If we have the absolute value isolate, that's what we've been doing the whole time. This method's not going to work. If you have that negative 19 first and then subtract 9, this number is going to be off. Remember the negative 28 when I go back to this, you're going to see that there's going to be a difference up here. So of course, yes, we subtract 9 first, and we get an absolute value of 5x equals 10. Okay, what now? We should know at this point. Okay, so before I start doing any actual math on this problem, before I start doing any math with this problem, I do have to make my two equations out of that. We know that absolute value says that the inside is equal to the number, and the inside is equal to the negative of that number. Because the absolute value will make that positive no matter what. That would not work in this case. You can't have it equal to 19 and negative 19 because the absolute value is not covering that 9. That is why we had to subtract that 9 before we do the two equations there. Hey, can you solve these? That's not too bad. Just divide by 5. We're going to have x equals 2. Divide by 5. We'll get x equals negative 2. Let's try these just to make sure that we have this right. If I plug in 2, what's 5 times 2? Negative 2. 5 times negative 2? After the negative 10? 10 plus 9, 19. Notice how the absolute value is only associated with this. That plus 9, that would not have worked if we would have set up the two equations without subtracting 9 first. That would have been a big problem. Let's try one of these on your own. Just get the hang of it, get your head around it. So what do we do first? Do we subtract 8 first, or do we make two equations first? Sure. You have to have your absolute value isolated before you make those two equations. So when we subtract 8, absolute value of 3x equals 6, that's where we can make those two equations. We know that if the absolute value of 3x equals 6, then if 3x equals 6, absolute value of 6 is 6. If 3x equals negative 6, absolute value of negative 6 is 6. We just solve each of these individually, and then we have our two solutions. So we divide by 3. X equals 2, divided by 3 over here. X equals negative 2. And we're done. How's it? Let's see, what else can we do with this? Let's try this problem. Hey, what do you suppose I do first on this? Why subtract the 4?
What's that for?
Or why add the 4? I'm just doing what you guys say. Why add the 4?
Because you want to isolate.
Yeah, hey, if it's not isolated, we cannot do anything with this. We cannot make up two equations right here. Listen, you cannot make two equations up right here. One of them's going to be wrong. One of them's going to be right, but one of them's going to be wrong. The one where you just drop the absolute value like this one would be right all the time. If you just do the math on it, that's essentially what we're doing, right? We're just ignoring the absolute value for this side. This one's the one that's going to be wrong. So what we really have to make sure we're doing is isolating the absolute value. It's up here on the board. Isolate the absolute value before you do any making two equations out of this thing. Yeah, you're right, add the 4. Three times the absolute value of y gives us... Oh, that's 17 plus 4. And now what? Good, yeah. Yeah, you're not even going to make up two equations yet. From here, we're going to divide by 3 to get the absolute value completely by itself. So since this is 3 times absolute value y, let's take care of that. If we divide by 3, yes, those 3's are gone. I get the absolute value of y equals 7. If the absolute value of y equals 7, what do you know about y?
It's 7.
Well, yeah, it is 7. That's one of our solutions. It does have two solutions. What's the other solution? That's actually how we opened up the introduction to this section, right? We had this type of idea. But look, you can still make two equations out of this, can't you? We can do y equals 7, and the inside equals the negative of that number, and that's exactly how we started our section here. Doing exactly that. There's just no more math you have to do with it. This is kind of a nice problem. All the math was before you even make the two equations. Why don't you try that one? See what happens. By the way, is it okay to get fractions on your problems today? Okay, so don't be afraid of the fractions. You might get some of those. Ready? Let's do this. First thing, what are you going to do? Good. So we're certainly not going to try to make it two equations, right? I mean, when you look at this thing, that's equal to a negative. Some people, if they don't know what they're really doing, they're going to go, oh, absolute value equal to a negative? That's no solution. Remember talking about that? No, we have to get the absolute value by itself before we make that determination. So, of course, we're going to add this. I hope you did that. We'll get 3 times the absolute value of y equals 2. What are you going to do now, or what did you do now? Great, get rid of that 3. We certainly don't want that thing hanging around with absolute value. What we want is absolute value equals a number. That's what we need to work with this problem. So absolute value of y equals 2/3. Is that okay? Good, we just do the same thing we did before. Now that you have the absolute value isolated, absolute value equals a number, we say, oh, the inside can equal the number itself, because I know an absolute value will keep positive number positive. That would be one solution. But also, I need the inside equal to the negative version of that number, because absolute value will take a negative and make it positive. So y also equals negative 2/3. Actually, not even a whole lot of work with those fractions. You just have to make one positive, one negative. Raise your hand if you got that. Good for you. That's fantastic. I would like to change this problem a little bit. Okay, just a little bit here. What if I made that positive? What if I made that positive? How would our problem change? Explain that. So if I do this right here and I say that's negative 2, is that okay to have? Well, we can divide by 3, but you're going to get negative 2/3, right? Okay. What if I did this? Is this one okay?
Yes.
Yeah. What would you have to do now? Okay, so make sure that we're isolating the absolute value before we make determinations whether there's no solution or not. Because if we do this, if I just look at it and go, oh, absolute value is equal to a negative, there's no solution there, we're going to make a mistake because your absolute value is not isolated. You got to completely isolate that thing first. Are you seeing the point there? So if we divide by negative 3 here, well, those aren't going to simplify to 1. We get absolute value of y equals, what's negative 2 over negative 3? Positive or negative? Definitely, yeah, we practiced that a few times. And then you go ahead and you actually get the same exact solution on that problem. Same exact thing. That's a way too big absolute value. There we go. Get a little crazy on the absolute value. That ever happen to you? Get a little crazy on the absolute value? All the time. Eat too many margaritas and absolute values are getting crazy, you know? Just kidding. What would the first thing we do on this problem be? Why aren't we multiplying by 4? Why aren't we setting up 2 equations? Why aren't we doing any of that stuff? I want you to take a look at it. Look at it. Is that doable? Can an absolute value ever equal a negative? So this is I kind of led you up to this problem on these two, like doing this whole thing over here. But if ever you have an absolute value and it's already isolated, is this one already isolated? And it's equal to a negative number. Can an absolute value itself ever give you a negative? Ever? No, not if it's isolated. Over here, hey, that was equal to a negative, but this was different. It was not isolated. Do you see the difference between this problem and that problem? Here, there's nothing we can do to get rid of that negative. Here, we could divide by that -3. Negative is gone. We can work with that problem. Here, we can't. So if you ever get an absolute value, it's already isolated and it's equal to a negative number, what are you going to have? Yeah, and you put the empty set. It's that circle with the line through it. So we say this numbers would satisfy that equation. Would you raise your hand feel okay with these basic absolute value equations so far? Left-hand side, you guys all right? All right. Now, the last question we have to ask is, what would happen if, instead of having like an absolute value equal to a number, like we had in every other case, what happens if we have an absolute value equal to an absolute value? So for instance, like that. What are we going to do there?
Would they have to be equal to each other?
Well, we'll talk about that. We've got several cases, okay? We've got certain cases which we're going to take a look at. What does absolute value do? No matter what, it makes it positive. You with me on that? So let's imagine a couple cases here. Let's imagine, pretend for a second, I don't know what these solutions are, we're going to figure out in just a minute, but can we pretend for a second that whatever we get out of this is going to make this 10. Can we pretend that for a second? Let's see how many cases these things will be equal to each other with. How many cases? Make these expressions equal to each other. If this was positive 10 and this was positive 10, would they be equal to each other? Because the absolute value of positive 10 equals the absolute value of positive 10. Does that make sense to you? So when I take the absolute value, they'd be equal. That's case one. How about this? What if this was negative 10 and this was negative 10? Would they be equal to each other there? Sure, because the absolute value of negative 10 is 10. Absolute value of negative 10 is 10. You guys still with me so far? Okay. What's another case where these absolute values would be equal to each other? I gave you two, where they're exactly the same number here or exactly the same number here. Positive 10, negative 10, negative 10. What's another case that you could have? Say that again. 10 equals negative 10. 10 and negative, okay. So if this was 10 and this was negative 10, would these still be equal? I need you to kind of get this if you're going to understand the idea here. Are these equal or not? Yeah. What's the absolute value of 10? Well, and then the absolute values, they both become positive, and they're still equal. There's one more case. If this is negative 10 and this is positive 10, would that still work? Yes. Absolute value of negative 10 is 10. Absolute value of positive 10 is 10. Do you see the four cases? There's actually only two cases. I want you to kind of see this for a second. I know I drew four of them up here, but these really are kind of the same idea. This idea, these first two are, if you have the same exact number inside your absolute value, whether they're both positive or whether they're both negative, if you have the same exact number, your absolute values will be equal to each other. Are you with me on that? Because positive 10 equals positive 10 in absolute value, and negative 10 equals negative 10 in absolute value. They're all positive 10. So far, so good? So this is case one. You have the same exact number. Case two. Case two. Case two is the case where the insides are opposite each other. However, when you take the absolute value, it doesn't matter because it's going to make everything positive no matter what. Do you see that case? So even though they're opposite numbers, one's 10, one's negative 10, one's negative 10, one's 10. Even though they're opposite numbers here and opposite numbers here, it doesn't matter. The absolute value will make them positive, and therefore you will have an equation in this case. So first case, same exact number. Second case, opposite numbers. So just like before, this is going to lead us to how many equations do you think? Not 4. We don't need 4 of them because these are going to work the same. This is the same case. Same number, same number. That's one equation here. This one is when you have opposite signs. Opposite, opposite. That's another case. So we're still going to get 2 equations out of this. And here's your equations. The first one leads to this equation. The first case here, says if I just ignore the absolute values and make these insides equal to each other, I am going to get a valid solution. Does this make sense to you? If I just set these insides equal to each other, that's what this says, they are equal. So if I set the insides equal to each other, that gives me 1. So 1 without changing anything, just equal to each other. One without changing any signs, directly equal. The other one says this. The other one says if they're opposite or off by a sign, so this is 10, this is negative 10, or this is negative 10, this is 10. We need one more equation. We need one where the first one stays the same, but the second one is negative. Okay, so 1 with changing the sign of the second expression. Now, I always have some students ask me, well, Mr. Leonard, if we make them both the same, 1 without changing signs, and we do 1 by changing the sign of the second expression, why don't we have to also change the sign of just the first expression, and why don't we have to have the negative and the negative? Well, I'll tell you. If we had, you guys need to be listening on this part, okay? If we had 1 without changing the sign, and then we change the sign of both of them, I need you to know that this and this are equivalent. If I make these equal, do you see that this and this are the same exact same? They say the same thing. If I divide both sides by -1, don't I get that back again? So I don't need both, I just need 1. Also the same thing here, if these are equal and these are equal, do you see that these are the same thing? Additional? If I divide both these by -1, I get that again. They're the same idea. So we don't need 4 equations, we just need 2. Okay, we just need 2. Let's go ahead and let's make these. Here's what I'm talking about. The first case says, if this inside part equals this inside part, that's here and here. Then whatever we get, absolute value will keep it the same. That's what we're saying. The second one says, if we keep the first one the same, and we change the sign of the second one, the second expression of there, absolute value is going to take those and make them both positive no matter what anyway. So the sign doesn't really matter. Do you see the similarity between what we're doing now and what we just finished doing? We keep 1 the same, didn't change at all. We keep the first part the same, and we're going to make the second one negative. Here's how you show that. Please watch carefully on this part. Is this accurate to do that? That good enough? Yeah. Explain why that is not good enough right there, this part. Oh, I see. So when I say negative, what I really mean by this, hopefully, well, we should be like rock solid after doing chapter 7 with all that stuff. That's what we really mean, right? We're taking negative of the entire side. You need parentheses there. Do you see what's going to happen with that negative? It's going to go to the full. and see what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, first step, what are you going to do here? What up? No, before that.
Subtract 3x.
Good. Get rid of the smaller variable. That's how you solve equations. When you have two variables on the same side or on different sides, you subtract the smaller variable first. That gives you an idea about where your variable is going to end up. So here we subtract 3x from both sides. You get x minus 5 equals 5. And lastly, what do? Yeah. You do the constants after you get rid of your smaller variable. That way you know where your variable is going to end up. Oh, that's weird. I said I didn't do that ahead of time. I just guessed. Cool. Actually, it's not going to end up being 10 inside of rest, so that would be something else, like 35. But yeah, it's weird. Now, let's go ahead and do the next one. Here, the 4x minus 5, that's not changing, but tell me exactly what I'm going to get on the second expression. So it changes both of our signs. Now, what are we going to do?
Carry over 3x.
Good. So add that to both. We get into that. We'll get 7x minus 5 equals negative 5. 7x minus 5 equals negative 5. Everybody, what's the next thing I am supposed to do? If I add 5 to both sides, I get 7x equals to how much? 0. Is that okay? Sure. Sure. What are we going to do now? Yeah, do the same thing you normally do. If we divide by 7, how much is x equal? 0. Good. 0 divided by 7 is 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. How many solutions do I get? 2. It's absolute value. You get 2 vertical lines, you get 2 solutions. Most of the time, this is equal to 0. Let's check them to see if what I was telling you was accurate, okay? Let's put this in there and see. We'll deal with the 10 first. Now, here's what I can tell you. The 10 should give us exactly the same thing inside of this absolute value. The 0 should give us opposites inside the absolute value. Let's see if this works. Do you guys need this anymore? Let's plug that in. If I plug in 10, what's 4 times 10? Minus 5. What's 3 times 10? Plus 5. Is the absolute value of 35 equal to the absolute value of 35? That works. Let's try the 0. What's 4 times 0? Minus 5. What's 3 times 0? Plus 5. Oh, those are opposites, like we thought. Is the absolute value of negative 5 equal to the absolute value of 5? That's another solution. That's how we're getting our 2 solutions. If you had made the first one negative and the second one negative, you would have this case again. You get 10 on both sides. Or you get 10 for your x. You get 35 on both sides. If you made this negative and this one you kept positive, you would again get negative 5. And you'd get 0 for x. That would happen either way. Why don't you try one of these on your own? We'll do one more example. We'll call it a day. By the way, this goes a lot quicker than what I just made it seem.